What happens when the man who built the company ends up hauling boxes on a freezing warehouse floor, and no one knows who he is? Landon Keller stood in the back of his black SUV, tugging on a faded brown hoodie. A fake beard covered the lower half of his face, and he wore thick glasses he didn't need. His boots were scuffed. His jeans were too loose. He looked nothing like the CEO of a 16-location packaging and logistics company. He looked like a guy trying to get a job. 16 years ago, he started this business in his garage, packing orders with his brother, delivering small shipments in his pickup truck. Now, they handled freight for major brands across the state. But lately, something felt off. Turnover was high in some locations. Too high. One warehouse in particular, Storehouse 12, had gone through 3 supervisors in 8 months. The last district manager report said it was just growing pains. Landon wasn't buying it. He hadn't been to that location in person since before the expansion. None of the warehouse workers had met him face to face. Most didn't even know what he looked like. Corporate always handled onboarding. He'd made sure of that. That's how Jimmy got the job. Jimmy was a temp. Just another new guy trying to get a foot in the door. His backstory was simple: moved from Montana, needed a job fast, didn't have a resume, but could lift heavy stuff. The manager at Storehouse 12 barely glanced at him during orientation. "Don't break anything, don't be late, and wear your vest," the manager, Greg, had said without looking up from his phone. Now it was Landon's third shift. The warehouse floor was loud and cold. Conveyor belts ran along the center, sorting packages to different zones. Forklifts beeped as they moved pallets. He'd been assigned to Zone C, mostly working the belt, unloading crates, and stacking them by category. "Yo, Jimmy," a guy in a blue cap called out. "You're with me today. Conveyor 3. The guy's name was Vince. Mid-30s, lean, fast talker. He'd been there for a while based on how everyone deferred to him. Landon had seen him cutting corners, already skipping barcode scans, passing off mislabels, being a little too quick to blame others when something got backed up. Still, he moved fast and no one questioned him. Landon nodded and followed him to the line. "You scan, I lift," Vince said. "We'll get through this faster." The shift started. Boxes flew down the belt. Vince yanked them off, stacking them 2 by 2. Landon scanned each barcode before tagging the crates, just like protocol. An hour in, Vince started skipping scans. "Don't bother with that one," he muttered. "It's all the same route." Landon hesitated. "Aren't we supposed to scan every crate?" Vince grunted. "If you want to finish this zone before midnight, yeah, you skip a few." "They don't care. Trust me." Landon didn't push it. He scanned anyway. Later, while lifting a double-crated box, Vince let it slam hard onto a rolling pallet. The edge of the crate clipped a corner and cracked. "Careful," Landon said. "It's fine," Vince waved him off. "Just keep going." But it wasn't fine. The next box landed and knocked the cracked one over. A sharp piece of splintered wood flew off and grazed a nearby worker's arm. "Yo, what the hell?" the worker yelled, clutching his sleeve. Vince shrugged. "He's fine. Ain't bleeding." Landon stepped forward. "You should report that," he said. "To who?" Vince scoffed. "Greg? He'd just tell us to tape it up and move on." Landon clenched his jaw. He knew corner cutting happened in warehouses. But this wasn't a mistake. Vince knew exactly what he was doing. 2 hours later, Landon was sent to help on Conveyor 5. A woman named Odessa was working alone. She was quiet but quick. Every crate was scanned, every box stacked safely. "You knew?" she asked. "Yeah. Jimmy. I figured. You don't skip steps like the others." "Why do they?" She shrugged. "They say it's about speed. But it's just laziness. Or they're trying to look good on numbers. Nobody checks unless something explodes." Odessa wore a brace on her wrist. It looked old, like she couldn't afford a new one. "You okay?" Landon asked. "Just tendinitis. I wrap it up, get through the shift." "You ever tell Greg?" She laughed under her breath. "He told me to drink more water." Landon's stomach twisted. The rest of the shift dragged. He couldn't stop thinking about the flying splinter. About the way Vince had looked the other way. About Odessa working through pain because no one cared. This wasn't what he built. This wasn't his company. After the shift ended, Landon sat on a crate outside, staring at the ground. His hands were sore. His back ached. But that wasn't what bothered him. What bothered him was knowing this had been going on for months, maybe longer, and he hadn't seen it, hadn't stopped it. He looked up as Vince walked past, tossing his vest into a bin. Later, Jimmy. Try not to be a hero. Landon watched him disappear around the corner. Tomorrow he'd be back on Conveyor 3, and he'd be watching everything. By the time Landon stepped back into Storehouse 12 for his fourth shift, the cold didn't bother him anymore. What did was the silence he noticed walking in. Not peaceful silence, tense, restrained. Like everyone was trying to keep their heads down and just get through the day. He clocked in and headed straight for Conveyor 3. Vince was already there, tossing on his gloves, eyes darting toward the back office. "You see Greg this morning?" he asked, voice low. "No," Landon said. "He was pissed last night. Said some damage report came through from corporate. Someone flagged a crate as improperly stacked. Said it was probably me. Thought maybe you mentioned something." "I didn't," Landon said, and he hadn't. But someone had. Maybe Odessa. Maybe someone else saw the splintered crate and said something. Vince leaned in. "Careful who you talk to. People around here don't like rats." Landon didn't answer. A forklift beeped behind them. Time to work. The first hour moved fast. Vince handled the bulk lifting again, but his attitude had shifted. He wasn't skipping steps anymore, at least not while Landon was watching. Then a new guy joined them. Younger, maybe early 20s, wiry frame, hoodie pulled tight under his vest. He introduced himself quickly, Marcus, and immediately started unloading boxes with them. "You scan, I'll move," he said, grabbing a small crate without waiting for instruction. Landon scanned. Marcus moved quicker than expected, but something about him felt off, rushed, unsteady. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted. "You good?" Landon asked. "Yeah," Marcus muttered. "Didn't sleep much." For crates in, Marcus dropped one. The box hit the floor hard, and the sound of glass shattering echoed. Vince cursed. "What the hell, man?" "Sorry. Slipped. You don't drop a crate like that unless you're high or half asleep." "I said I'm fine," Marcus snapped. Vince stepped forward. "Don't get loud, rookie. You break another one, I'll make sure you're back on the sidewalk before lunch." "Leave it," Landon said quickly. "It's done." Vince backed off, muttering under his breath. Marcus didn't say another word. Landon kept an eye on him for the rest of the shift. At break, the three of them sat near the loading dock. Odessa passed by, carrying a clipboard and chewing on a protein bar. Landon nodded to her. She gave a small wave back. Vince noticed. "You really talk to her?" he asked. "Yeah." "Why?" "She's not even full-time. Half the people here ain't. Some of 'em been temps for over a year. They keep dangling the full hire thing, insurance, benefits, but Greg doesn't want to bump anybody up. He says temps are easier to move." "That legal?" Landon asked. Vince shrugged. "Legal enough if no one complains." Landon looked across the dock where Odessa was helping a guy stack overflow onto a rolling pallet. Her wrist brace was tighter today, and she was favoring her left hand. "She ever get help for that wrist?" "Why would she? HR's in another city." When break ended, Landon was reassigned to inventory audit. A supervisor named Carla handed him a checklist and radioed the front to unlock the cage where high-value items were stored. It was colder inside, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A guy named Terry joined him, older, heavyset, walked with a slight limp. "You're the new guy?" Terry asked, voice raspy. "Yeah. Jimmy. Let's move fast. They want these numbers by end of shift, and we're already behind." They started with the top shelves. Labeled boxes, serial numbers, all had to be matched to the manifest. Terry climbed the short ladder while Landon read off codes. "You been here long?" Landon asked. 5 years, Terry said. "Longer than anyone else in this section. Used to be more of us. Now it's just me and one other guy rotating. They cut hours last quarter." "Why?" "Said we weren't moving product fast enough. So they moved more people to shipping. Doesn't make sense. Inventory gets wrong, shipping gets wrong." They reached the last shelf. One box was missing. Terry looked at the manifest. "Says it's here, but it's not." "What is it?" Router. Retails over $400. You report it? Terry sighed. We used to. Now we just mark it as in transit and hope it turns up. Greg doesn't want missing items showing up in the dashboard. Says it makes the site look sloppy. Landon tightened his grip on the checklist. That's fraud. Terry shrugged. It's warehouse politics, kid. You'll learn. That night, Landon stayed behind after the shift ended. He told Vince he had extra cleanup duty, but really he was waiting. 30 minutes after the floor cleared out, Greg came out of the back office, coat slung over his shoulder, talking on the phone. I don't care what ops says. If they want every temp to have a badge, they can send someone to print the damn things. I've got 40 hours of unpaid OT this month because they won't send help. Don't talk to me about compliance. He hung up and turned. Landon stepped out from behind a rack. Hey, Landon said. Got a second? Greg blinked. You're the new guy, Jimmy. Yeah, just had a question. Why are some of the safety logs in shipping missing signatures? Greg narrowed his eyes. What? I looked at the checklist near Conveyor 3. There are 3 days without supervisor initials. You poking around in the log sheets? I was helping Terry. Saw them on the way back. Greg stepped closer. Look, Jimmy, you're here to lift boxes, not audit the building. You want to move up, you do your job and stay quiet. That's how it works. What if something goes wrong? What if someone gets hurt? Then we file the incident and move on. Landon didn't flinch. That's not how it's supposed to work. Greg's tone hardened. You're a temp. You don't like it, don't come back. Landon nodded slowly. Got it. The next morning, Landon made one call to HR. He gave them a list, missing safety logs, falsified inventory records, ignored injury claims, and discriminatory scheduling practices. He didn't give his real name yet. Just told them they needed to visit Storehouse 12 unannounced that same day. Then he returned to the warehouse in uniform. When he arrived, Greg was already red-faced and pacing. 2 HR reps were in the office, clipboards out, asking questions. Workers whispered in the aisles. Vince looked nervous. Terry was nowhere to be seen. Greg spotted Landon. You, he snapped. You talked to them? Landon didn't answer. An hour later, Odessa was pulled into the office. 10 minutes after that, Vince was called in. When he came out, he looked shaken. He didn't speak to anyone. Just before lunch, the HR reps called a full floor meeting. They stood in front of the main conveyor. We've identified compliance failures at this site, the lead rep said. Effective immediately, Greg Nolan has been released from his position. Additional oversight will be assigned to this location for the remainder of the quarter. All injury reports, temp contracts, and safety violations will be reviewed. Anyone with concerns may speak to us privately. The room was dead silent. Then Odessa quietly stepped forward. I have a few things to report. After her, others followed. Vince tried to leave, but the second HR rep stopped him. We need to speak with you again. Landon stayed quiet. He wasn't ready to reveal himself yet, not until the dust settled, but something had shifted. People were finally speaking. That night, as the warehouse emptied, Odessa walked past Landon, wrist brace in hand. Thanks for listening, she said. Landon nodded. Keep speaking. He wasn't done yet. Landon pulled his hood tighter as he stepped into the warehouse the next morning, but not out of cold. The air inside Storehouse 12 had shifted. Not tense like before, uncertain. The kind of uncertainty that comes right before a storm or right after one. Greg was gone, but nothing had replaced him yet. And when leadership disappears without warning, people notice. He clocked in quietly. The usual chatter near the lockers was missing. A few workers nodded at him, but most kept to themselves. Vince wasn't in sight. Odessa was already on the line, her wrist now wrapped in athletic tape, not the old brace. That meant someone had finally taken a look at it. Landon was assigned to Conveyor 2 that day. It was quieter than his usual section, bulk shipments, fewer individual boxes, more pallet stacking. His partner for the shift was a guy named Eli, stocky build, late 40s, eyes that didn't miss much. You're the Montana kid, right? Eli asked, adjusting his gloves. Yeah. Jimmy. Eli didn't offer a handshake, just handed him a clipboard. You're on barcode. I'll handle the lift. They fell into rhythm. The work wasn't as fast-paced as Conveyor 3, but the boxes were heavier. After about an hour, Eli paused and leaned against the wall, stretching out his shoulder. "You hear who's running the floor now?" he asked. "No, nobody. HR's sending someone from corporate to babysit until they find a new site lead. Someone from ops, supposedly." Landon said nothing. He knew who the someone was. The meeting was scheduled for the next day. He was no longer just observing. He was stepping in. They went back to work. A few crates later, Eli glanced over his shoulder and lowered his voice. "You ever work nights?" "No." "Why?" "Don't. I've pulled doubles before." The night crews held together with duct tape and caffeine. Half those guys were brought in last minute when volume spiked last quarter. No training, no oversight. One guy, Jared, nearly backed a forklift into the loading dock door last week. Anyone report it? Didn't need to. The door bent inward. They just chalked it up to equipment fatigue and moved on. Landon scanned another crate, slower this time. Where was Greg during that? Home by 5 like always. Later, during the lunch break, Landon sat near the vending machines, sipping water. Odessa walked by, holding a folder. She looked different, focused, maybe even slightly hopeful. "They're reviewing my conversion," she said. "Corporate." Said I've technically been eligible for 4 months. He nodded. "That's good. Most temps here don't last long enough to even ask. I stayed because I needed it. I still do." He waited, watching her weigh her next words. "I told them about Vince. They asked for specifics. I gave them names, dates, everything I had." "You worried?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, not anymore." She walked off before he could say more. As he stood to return to the floor, a voice caught his attention. "Jimmy, right?" A tall man in a pressed shirt and site visitor badge approached. His name tag read Daniel Corporate Risk. "I'm walking the floor today. Mind if I shadow you for a bit?" Landon nodded, hiding the flicker of irony. "Sure." They walked the perimeter together, Daniel jotting notes on a tablet. He didn't ask many questions at first, just watched. But by the time they circled back near Conveyor 2, he paused. "I've been to 12 different sites this year. This one's got the strangest paper trail I've seen. Clean logs, perfect inventory counts, but every employee I've spoken to has a different story." "Wouldn't surprise me," Landon said. Daniel studied him. "You've only been here a week, but your name came up in 3 conversations this morning. People say you're asking a lot of questions." "I just do the job," Landon said carefully. Daniel smiled, not warmly. "That's what worries me. People who just do the job don't usually cause ripples." He walked off without another word. Landon knew what that meant. Corporate had started asking questions, too. That was fine. He wasn't hiding for much longer. That afternoon, a commotion broke out near the back loading dock. A pallet jack had tipped over, spilling boxes across the floor. Workers scrambled to clean it up. Landon rushed over, helping stack the scattered crates. One of them had split open, electronics inside, partially crushed. The label was missing. "Anyone scan this before it fell?" he asked. A new guy, tall, thin, maybe early 20s, shook his head. "I don't know, man. Vince told me just to move the pallet. Didn't say anything about scanning." Landon looked at him. "Vince told you?" "Yeah. Said if I took too long checking labels, I'd get moved to returns. Said they don't take slackers on the shipping line." Landon stood up, hands on his hips. "Where is he now?" "Left early. Said he had an off-site meeting." Landon didn't respond. He turned and walked straight to the security booth. He knocked once and stepped inside. The guard looked up. "You got camera access to the loading dock?" "Yeah. Last 24 hours. "Why?" He pointed to the timestamp. "I need to see who gave that load order." The guard didn't argue. They pulled the feed. There it was, Vince, gesturing toward the jack, waving the new guy forward, then walking off with his phone in hand. Landon took a deep breath. "Can you send that clip to HR?" The guard nodded. By the time shift ended, Vince still hadn't returned. Landon stayed late, folding safety vests into storage bins when Daniel walked in again. HR's requesting a formal review of your section, Daniel said. Level 3 audit. Means they're taking this seriously. I figured. Daniel narrowed his eyes. You know more than you're letting on. Landon removed his gloves and stepped forward. You're right. My name's not Jimmy. It's Landon Keller. Daniel blinked. As in, I own this company. Silence. I came here because I stopped trusting reports. I needed to see it myself. And now that I have, I'm not just auditing this warehouse, I'm cleaning it out. Daniel stared at him, processing. You're going to announce it publicly? Tomorrow morning. First thing. Daniel nodded slowly. Well, that explains a lot. He left without another word. The next morning, a mandatory floor meeting was called. Workers gathered near the central belt, murmuring. Odessa stood near the back. Eli crossed his arms. Vince was nowhere in sight. Landon stepped forward, no hoodie, no disguise. Just a plain black jacket and clear eyes. I know most of you haven't met me before. My name is Landon Keller. I founded this company 16 years ago. And until last week, I trusted people to tell me what was happening inside these walls. The murmurs stopped. I was wrong to trust second-hand reports. I should have been here sooner. I should have seen what you've been dealing with. A few heads turned. Odessa's eyes didn't move. I've seen safety logs go unsigned. I've seen injured employees ignored. I've seen people threatened for doing their jobs the right way. That ends now. He looked around the room. Effective immediately, Vince is terminated. We have video evidence of him violating multiple safety protocols and intimidating new hires. If you've been pressured into cutting corners, speak up. You will not be punished. A worker in the front lowered his head, visibly emotional. All temp workers who've been here longer than 6 months will be reviewed for full-time conversion within 2 weeks. If you've been overlooked, come to me directly. Odessa stepped forward, folder in hand. What if they retaliate? They won't. If anyone retaliates for speaking up, they'll be gone before the end of the day. No warnings. He let the words sit. I'm putting someone new in charge of the site starting tomorrow. Someone who's earned trust, not abused it. And I'll be back often. No more distance. No more silence. He stepped down. No applause. Just quiet understanding. As people filed back to their stations, Odessa approached him. You think it's enough? No, he said. But it's a start. Landon returned to Storehouse 12 2 days later, this time through the front door, without a disguise, a clipboard, or gloves. The morning light barely reached through the high warehouse windows, but the floor already buzzed with motion. The new interim site lead, Carla, the same supervisor who'd managed inventory audits, stood near the dock with a stack of new safety checklists in her hand and a quiet authority that didn't need to be announced. She didn't look surprised when Landon approached. You here to check boxes or make announcements? Neither, Landon said. I'm here to work the floor with you. No cameras. No press releases. Just you and me. 1 week. Carla looked at him for a beat, then nodded once. Then grab a vest. We've got a new pallet sorter who's already behind. Landon followed her to the back loading zone, where a teenage hire named Kian was trying to flatten a skewed stack of boxes with a broken hand jack. His movements were hesitant, like he was trying to guess what came next rather than knowing. Carla crouched beside him. You get trained on this? Sort of, Kian said. A guy showed me for like 5 minutes, then said he had to cover intake. Landon stepped in and gripped the jack handle. You load from the center, adjust from the side, not the front. That's how you pinch your hand. Kian looked at him sideways. Aren't you the guy who fired Greg? I'm the guy trying to make sure no one else gets hurt. Together, they reset the pallet and walked Kian through a full load adjustment. Carla observed in silence, then handed Kian a laminated reference card and told him to shadow Adrian in outbound next shift. As Kian moved off, Landon turned to her. How many people are still untrained? 9 temps, 2 new hires. The rest are decent, but we're short on floaters. We'll need at least 3 more if we want to avoid double assignments next week. I'll approve the requisition. Then do it before Friday. I'm not running this place on borrowed time. She walked off without waiting for a reply. Landon didn't mind. Carla had been overlooked too long. That was on him. By mid-shift, Landon was on Conveyor 4. Not supervising working. The line was slow today. A tech issue had knocked out one of the scanners, which meant manual entry. Odessa was 2 stacks ahead, typing in codes with one hand and taping labels with the other. Her wrist was wrapped again, but the tape was newer, more secure. You shouldn't be on manual with that wrap, Landon said. I'm not. I'm on light duty. Carla said I can help on documentation. You're still typing. I'm ambidextrous. Landon raised an eyebrow. I taught myself, she added. It's not hard if you're motivated. He handed her a roll of blank tags. You still planning to stay once your status changes? I've stayed through worse, she said. Now I want to see what this place looks like when it's run right. They worked in silence for a while. Then Odessa spoke again, voice low. You should know something. Vince came by the parking lot yesterday. Said he was just picking up a friend, but he kept staring through the chain link. Didn't say anything. Just watched. Landon didn't respond right away. Then he said, make a report. I'll make sure it's logged. You think he's dangerous? I think people who lose control of power sometimes try to take it back. Doesn't mean they succeed. She nodded once and returned to typing. Landon moved on. In the break room that afternoon, a small group of workers sat around a plastic table eating noodles out of foil packs. Eli was among them, rubbing his shoulder. Still not used to the new pace, he said. Feels like things are moving faster. But steadier. Or maybe I'm just not bracing for accidents anymore. That's the goal, Landon said, sipping water. One of the newer hires, a woman named Rena, leaned forward. Is it true we're getting new gloves? Mine have holes. Yes. Bulk orders already placed. Should have them by Tuesday. And the fans? Summers get brutal in here. I've approved 2 industrial units. Just need the electrician to clear the wiring route. Rena looked skeptical. We've heard that kind of thing before. Not from me. Eli watched him carefully, then said, You mean to stay involved this time? I do. Someone knocked hard on the break room door. Carla entered with a paper in her hand, eyes scanning the group. Landon. I need you. He stood and followed her out. They walked briskly to the intake dock. A man stood by the east gate, arms crossed, wearing a beanie and too much swagger for someone who didn't belong there. It was Vince. Landon stepped forward, jaw tightening. You're trespassing. I'm here for my final check, Vince said. HR sent a message saying I could pick it up. Payroll handles final checks by mail. You know that. Didn't trust the mail? Then you should have made an appointment. Vince's eyes darted to the yard. I've got a few things in my old locker. Everything was boxed and labeled. It's gone. Vince took a step forward. Carla moved in beside Landon, her expression flat. You're done here, she said. Don't come back. You think you're running this place now? Vince snapped. I don't think it, she said. I know it. Security arrived moments later. Vince didn't resist, but his eyes lingered on Landon as he turned to go. You think this changes anything? He said. The next guy will cut corners too, because that's the only way to hit numbers. Landon didn't flinch. Then the numbers change. Vince shook his head and walked out. That night, Landon stayed late with Carla reviewing shift logs and safety notes. For the first time in months, the forms were complete. The floor reports matched the actual inventory. The injury log had 2 entries, both minor, both treated, both signed. At the end of the shift, he walked the floor one last time. Odessa was shutting down her line. Kian was sweeping near the dock. Eli was sitting on a crate, laughing with Rena over something she'd said about the vending machine eating her card. He paused near the overhead door, watching the last outbound truck pull away. Carla joined him, hands in her jacket pockets. I've got one request, she said. What's that? Don't disappear again. I won't. She nodded once. Then we're square. The next morning, Landon drafted a memo to all site leads across the company. It was short, direct, and unfiltered. Effective immediately, all warehouse locations will undergo a rotating executive observation cycle. No advance notice. No exemptions. All sites must bring safety logs, injury reports, and training certifications up to date within 10 business days. Any retaliation against employees for raising compliance concerns will result in immediate termination. No warnings. No excuses. He signed it with his full name and title and sent it without CCing anyone. Then he picked up his keys, grabbed his jacket, and walked back onto the floor. Not as a visitor. Not as a temp. As the person responsible. And this time he was staying.